Ini. Nggak salah. Buat was bingung. 26. Wih, target Rizal terpenuhi.
Siapa? Kalau mama tuh keren banget ya, pinter banget ya. Siapa? Sama ngantong lagi. Keren aja sih sebenarnya.
Okay, I think we are ready now to begin our session. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Integrity Wake Up Call. This is actually a pre-event of the 2025 Al-Jami'ah Forum. It's a live warm-up for our main conference next December. So thank you all for joining this important conversation as we prepare to take this debate into a broader forum, inshallah, next month. So our forum next month will be entitled Beyond Bureaucracy, Autonomy and Integrity in Indonesian Islamic Higher Education. Let me give you some context, like 3 or 4 minutes before we welcome our distinguished speaker to deliver what they have already prepared for us. So I think I will start from here. For the past decade, Indonesian universities have pushed aggressively toward international publication, especially in Scopus. This strategy has produced visibility and also volume, but there is also a paradox. So the rapid expansion has revealed structural vulnerabilities, pressure to publish fast, questionable authorship pattern, and also increasingly visible integrity concern across institutions. So what was meant to strengthen quality has, in my opinion, in some cases led to the opposite. This also proceed what we call the paradox between global north and global south. In much of the global north, indexing system involved alongside strong research cultures, stable funding, rigorous oversight. But we in global south, probably including us in Indonesia, we had the pressure to catch up, has collided with uneven infrastructure, limited research training, and also promotion system tied directly to publication count. And we therefore so glad to hear news that Professor Lokman Meho has done it very tremendously. And one important development in understanding this problem is what Professor Lokman Meho will share to us, the Research Integrity Risk Index. Is it initiated by him from American University of Beirut, and he has already been joining us today. Thank you for that, Professor Lokman. It is probably the first empirically grounded and also composite indicator designed to detect institutional level interrogatories. So we will hear directly from Professor Lokman Meho. This is actually the summary of what we got like last year, Professor. So you had several Indonesian universities as red flag category, other in high risk, and the other in watch list. So we are eager to see and hear more from you. But these findings spark national debate among us. Professor Lokman Meho, probably a year ago when you published this, your finding, there response, criticism, also debate among us, especially from scholars. And we have invited one of them to join us today. He is Dr. Zulkarnain Hamson from University of Hasanuddin, the one that in your category belong to the red flag one. So probably, I mean, this should be a balanced forum in which we can see the perspective from Professor Lokman Meho. On the other hand, the perspective of Zulkarnain Hamson as well. Also, I think we have also integrity concern. So like this is our national publisher, national magazine. In 2024, it reported cases of professor who allegedly advanced through publication in predatory journal. So this is, and then collected and complemented with the other factors such as predatory publishing in our ecosystem. I think this is really serious thing to think about in our current situation. And finally, we have also this academic studies show that Indonesia is one of the world's most significant contributors to predatory journal. It's about 16.7% of our Scopus Index article are suspected to be in predatory outlet. So with all this background, with this brief overview of scopusization and then Professor Meho's finding, credential vulnerabilities, predatory publishing partners, we now want to move to our speakers because each of them, the three of them, very distinguished scholars, they will approach the integrity question from a different angle. For the first time, I think I would like to give the floor for Dr. Rizky Amelia Zain. She is currently a researcher at Erlangen University, also affiliated with Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich. And she works on paper mills. That's very interesting topic. Predatory network, global integrity system, and so on and so forth. We want to hear her perspective on Indonesian ecosystem. And today she will speak on fostering the culture of transparency and the integrity crisis in Indonesia. So Dr. Amelia, where are you? The floor is absolutely yours. 15 to 20 minutes, please.
So thank you so much for having me today. Before I start, I'd like to share my screen. So give me a couple of, please give me 20 minutes for doing that. All right. Oh, sorry, I just need to.
So it's like 8 in Munich by now, Dr. Rizky?
Yes, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Great, we can see it by now.
so yes, probably you can see it by now. All right. Do you see my main slide or the other speaker view? You can see the main slides, right?
Yeah, the main slide.
So,
It's
all right,
perfect.
that's very
Mm-hmm.
good. Amazing. So, yes, thank you so much for having me today. I'm very glad you're here. And yes, only a bit of introduction about myself, if you allow me to do that. So, my name is Amelia, so you can call me Amelia. So I'm now doing my PhD. I mean, it's just already finished last week. So my background actually in quantitative social psychology. So I actually deal a lot with human behaviors in general, especially in the social context. However, I'm also have some kind of I developed some kind of interest in meta science, which means that I'm also investigating the study. So I'm studying the scientific process itself and how to improve that. So this also made me realize that that we need to also treat scientific research as a as a social process, because it involves human, right? It involves human nature, human behavior. So we need to understand how actually we do research. And within the specific meta science field, I'm very interested in a very specific topic, which is the computational reproducibility. So I'm interested in how scientific research can be reproduced. So reproduced computationally. So when there is one team investigating one specific topic, reproducibility means that another team can perfectly reproduce the results. They ended up with perfectly identical results. So I'm also interested in how people doing like ethical decision making. So this is also it made me realize that when it comes to when it comes to scientific misconduct, there are also some aspects of this behavior actually dealing with how people decide to engage or disengage with this questionable research practices or blatant misconduct. So this has actually made me realize that this is an important topic. Then probably my background in psychology can have something to say about this. So so this presentation should be short. So I only made a very specific, a very brief point here, only 3 points basically in this presentation. So the first thing is that dealing with one question: do we actually have a crisis of scientific integrity? So this is also a debatable topic, right? Okay, so we know that it happens around us. We can feel, we can sense that, but do we have sufficient evidence to estimate the scale of the problems? Is it severe? Is it everywhere? Or it actually just bad apples, only few people actually doing this? It's not the problem of the entire ecosystem. So this brings us to the second point. So is it only bad actors, or is actually problems that lies within the system? Because this very questions then would lead us in which level or in which aspect that we should make changes, we should make reforms. Is it when we're dealing with a few bad apples, a few bad behaviors, then just basically just putting a system where making sure that people are punished or get repercussion from their unethical behavior, that will be enough. But when the questions actually lies within the system, then probably we need to change the system, right? So I think this is very interesting questions to discuss. Is it is a behavior of very few people, or is it the problems of the entire ecosystem? And the third point, and I think this is also oftentimes being left out from our entire conversation. So we're talking a lot about the problems. We talk a lot about the severity of the problems, but then I think it makes us somehow feeling left out and feeling like being less empowered is that we don't talk more about the solution. So what's the solutions here? So what we can do to improve the situation, what we can do to disincentivize people not to make these unethical behaviors or unethical decisions. So this is why I'm going to talk about the culture of transparency. So how transparency can actually make this work. So this entire presentation actually based on my 2 published writings. So this actually argues why university rankings actually incentivize bad behaviors or unethical practices. And the second is actually also based on my previous work on paper mills. So why people choose to buy paper mills instead of actually doing scientific work, for example, and what it causes. I mean, what damage that is being done by doing this behavior, and also what can we do to improve the situation. So if you'd like to read these articles, I also provide the links. And first of all, probably, I think this is something that you are familiar with. So I'm getting the data from from the database that we all know and love from Scopes. And this is also shows that hello.
Pardon, Ibu Amel. I think
Yeah.
our slide is not moving. This is just
Yes.
moving.
All
Okay.
right. Okay. Amazing.
Good.
Thank you. So this is something that we sorry. So this is the data from database that we all love and we all know and love from Scopes. And we actually here we show, is it still in the intro? Sorry. Then here we can clearly see that there is a massive increase since 2012 when it comes to volume. I think Pak Muammar previously mentioned it already, that there is a sudden increase of the volume of publications in the Scopes. And here I notice there are 2 important moments. There are 2 important moments that probably, it's of course, it's only a hunch, but here we can see that at the point of 2012, there's a mandate. I would say it's not a mandate, but it's more like a suggestion from the ministry that the universities needs to introduce some obligations to students to publish their work, from bachelor degrees to from doctoral programs. Here, it is clearly stated in the letter that the university has to make it a mandate. Well, actually, this letter doesn't have any legal obligation, doesn't have any legal consequences, but apparently lots of universities interpret this as a legal mandate. So they started to push the students and also the lecturers to publish more. And also, this is another tipping point here that I clearly show here in the graph is the start of this this policy, like the internationalization policy, started in 2014. And this is where Pak Nasir was appointed as a minister. So when he was a minister, he pushed a lot of policies to improve, to basically to force universities to increase their publication of scientific outputs. Here we can see that yes, the policy is amazingly worked. Even until now, we can see like a really sharp increase. It's even, I would say, it's exponentially increase of the volume of the scientific outputs. But here we can see that here from the top 8 outlets by the number of publications, we are dealing with mostly conference proceedings. I don't want to make any arguments about the quality, because I'm a kind of believer that when we want to guesstimate the quality of scientific outputs, then we have to actually read it. So it doesn't automatically show from the outlets where this paper published. But this means, but this actually just means that that people would respond these policies by looking for some kind of shortcuts, because obviously proceedings is easier. It's easier to publish in a proceeding rather than a traditional journal. Here, meaning that people respond this policy by looking for a quick way out, for a quick solution to this enormous pressure to publish. And yes, apparently the system actually triggers the sudden proliferation. There is a numerous public statements by the minister at that time that he wanted university to publish more, and even he made some comparison with neighboring countries. That of course we have heard like this kind of conversation, comparing how Indonesians producing the outputs, and we compare it to Malaysia, for example, with Thailand, with other neighboring countries. And this is always the arguments, right? I mean, this is always the arguments that supports or that basically that make the system put in place. So I'm not sure whether this is a well thought policy, but this is how we heard every day at that time. And also, when we talk about science, when we talk about scientific publication, scientific outputs, then we actually touching upon the very principle of science, that is self-corrections, right? Okay, so science is powerful. Science is that's a powerful force of human civilization because its ability to correct themselves. So what makes it trustworthy is that we have to be able to distinguish. We need to differentiate the credible research findings with the dubious one. And this is why retraction is put in place. So why a retraction is important, why retractions tells us important information, because it's actually a system where we can correct scientific records. And here we can see that the number of retraction per year for papers with Indonesia, with authors with Indonesian affiliation is getting, I mean, it's not really stable. We can't really sense like a coherent trend here, but there is a sharp increase in 2018, and this comes from a massive retraction in IOP publishing. So all of those conference proceedings, there was numerous concerns raised for these types of publications, but then there was an effort from the publisher to correct some articles that they deem not suitable for publications. There's a sharp increase, but we can see that there is an increase as well in the following year afterwards. But again, if we compare the sudden proliferation with how we correct scientific records by retraction, it doesn't really, it's not comparable. We publish thousands of articles per year, but we retract only a very, very few percentage, a very few proportion of those thousands of papers that are published per year. So this means that I'm not sure. Is it actually, I mean, do we as a scientist, as a scientific community, actually self-correcting our publication record or our scientific outputs? And even if we try to look at the reason why all of these articles were retracted, most of them actually point out to the possibility of scientific misconduct. Sometimes when it comes to retractions, publishers are not transparent enough, or sometimes it's very unclear. They give like a very vague reason why some articles are retracted. But from my past experiences, and also from after hearing from other people's experiences when dealing with retractions, most of this retraction actually related to the paper mill activity. So this is commercial enterprises who often offer authorship for sale. So people don't, if you want to get your name published in a prestigious journal, for example, you don't need to actually do research, but instead you can just pay someone to write an article for you. So this is the case of paper mill. And from from the reasons of retractions here, it's more, I mean, it's very vague, but most likely it is pointing out to scientific misconduct that is around paper mill activities. And yes, we are prolific. However, there are many high profile cases where then we kind of like doubt, or maybe this is not okay. So we are really great at producing scientific outputs. However, when it comes to credibility of the scientific outputs, maybe we need to take a step back and then think about how we evaluate quality and how we define quality. And of course, this high profile cases, of course, like really severe, this is really severe scientific misconducts. And often in nature, they only have like, it's only a very few cases of scientific like this severe scientific misconducts, but actually it tells us more about the research ecosystem that we are living in. So maybe it actually a symptom. It's actually signals that there must be something wrong with how we do research in general. And again, this is my first point. Do we actually have scientific integrity crisis here? Yeah, we probably do. But oftentimes, these scientific misconduct cases actually they are massively underreported. Yeah, so when it comes to unethical behavior, we have to assume, and in the literature of unethical behavior, it also mentioned that what actually we see on the surface, it's just only a few bits of the problem. But what actually lies behind this, it's just a massive underreporting. And this is actually leads to, this is actually caused by the lack of transparency, how an institution handle scientific misconduct cases. So when someone is investigated, when a high profile case, when a high profile figure is being investigated for scientific misconduct accusation, oftentimes institution doesn't want to make it public, right? I mean, it's a part of the threat to institutional public image. So they want to make it as close as possible. So they want to deal it internally instead of announcing to the public what's actually being what they're actually doing and what's being done to this kind of accusation. So it's very difficult to actually understand the scale of the problems. And the most important feature of science is self-correction, as I mentioned before. And one valuable tool to do self-correction is doing post-publication review. So most of the time, the scientific misconduct cases can only bring into the light when someone actually doing a review of a published work. And this is very difficult. Sometimes we think that when the research gets published in a journal, for example, it means that, yeah, it's done. My job's done. It's already published. But the problem is we can only detect this misconduct by looking again, by correcting again what's already published in the literature. But are we ready with this? Are we ready that our published work actually being reviewed again by the public? And of course, we need more evidence for the scale of the severity, not just hearsay, not just personal feelings, but actual evidence for the scale of severity. But for my personal opinion, I'm actually quite doubtful that this is possible, given that the lack of transparency when people are dealing with scientific misconduct cases. And what about cases of scientific misconduct that involve abuse of power? And this is also give the complexity, another layer of complexity when we're talking about scientific misconduct. And again, if we're dealing with scientific misconduct that involves abuse of power, then how we can design a system that guarantees the safety of the whistleblowers? This is sometimes, even oftentimes, it left out from the conversation. And the RI index, I think it's actually aligns with the claims made by Professor Meho that it gives us lots of valuable information about the risk of compromised scientific integrity, but it doesn't tell us anything about the severity. And again, from the literature, I'm quite confident in saying that it's better to assume that the actual scale of severity is even worse than the risk, because it's just embedded nature of scientific misconduct. So I think it's helpful, it's valuable, but it doesn't tell us anything about the severity. But we have to assume that the scale of the severity, it's even worse than the risk reported. And this brings us to the second point. Is it a problem of a very few individuals, or we're dealing with really bad research ecosystem? If we look at the literature that deals with why Indonesian researcher, to be specific, dealing with this, they want to engage in this kind of scientific misconduct. And oftentimes I see I see a lot of people arguing that, well, this is basically problems of individuals, very few individuals that happen to have a flawed moral characters. But even for a psychologist, from in my perspective, this is unsatisfying. This is an unsatisfying explanation. So in this literature, they're basically saying that, well, these people, they're doing a scientific misconduct. They keep using the pressure to publish as a scapegoat to justify unethical practices. However, this is an exhaustive explanation. And because for me, as a social psychologist, this actually assumes that human behavior happens in a vacuum. We completely neglect the social context that actually drives this behavior. So in order to explain, in order to comprehensively understand why people engage in scientific misconduct, we have at least 6 plausible explanations. Then involves different levels of analysis, not only at the individual level, but also at the institutional and in the systemic level. So the first explanation when it comes to individual level, it's about rational choice theory. So basically, unethical decision making here arises from cost-benefit calculations. So when people engage in ethical behavior, they want to maximize the payoff. They want to get a better promotion. They want to get more incentives, monetary incentives from publishing the papers. And this is actually the case we can see here all the time. Even though, of course, this is just anecdotal observation, but we can see some credibility in this explanation. And the second explanation is still related to this previous research, why people engage in unethical behavior. Is the bad apples theory. It's basically just more of flawed characters. So some people who are really bad actors, they just choose not to publish their research in a traditional way, but instead they choose to look for a more like shortcuts solution. And the third explanation is that it comes from general strain theory, which means that here unethical behavior, it stems from maladaptive coping of extreme pressure. So when something that is really high is at stake, when the pressure to publish is so enormous, then probably this is how people, unethical behavior is how people cope with the situations. So this negative feelings actually drives people to behave unethically. Of course, again, we can see some merit from this explanation. And the next explanation is prospect theory here. Here meaning that basically unethical behavior stems from the fear of loss instead of potential gain. So it's not the wish or desire to get promotion or desire to get incentives that drives people's behavior, but it's more like the fear of losing some privileges from their job that actually drives that behavior. So if they fear of getting of losing some grants, for example, then it actually drives them to choose the unethical behavior. And those are individual levels explanation, but now we're dealing with the institutional level of explanation. Here, the first explanation is organizational justice theory. It means that individuals who perceive themselves being treated fairly by the institution, then they will behave more fairly themselves. However, if their institution are perceived as being unfair, then people are more likely to engage in unethical behavior just to make up this perceived unfairness. So if people think that the institution don't pay them fairly, or they're not being treated fairly by the system, and they will make up this perceived unfairness by being engaged in unethical behavior. Again, this is an explanation that has some merits, and probably my hunch would tell me that this actually the case is actually has a more explanatory power in an Indonesian context. And the next one would be the ethics of public administration. Please remember that in universities, research institution in Indonesia are parts of public institutions. So this also comes with the consequences that institution is managed in a way that individuals are seen as an isolated entity, And in this institution here, try to unify these individuals into a single efficient and rational working units. And here, we are seen as lazy, selfish, and less interested in the common good. So therefore, national unity, institutional unity and discipline should always be maintained. And the system is taking place just to enforce these disciplines and unity. And this extreme emphasis of effectiveness, efficiency, and quantitative outputs is at the expense of motivational crowding out, or in my writing, it is called a Cobra effect. So this means that when individuals are dealing with this extreme or enormous pressure of being efficient in their work, especially that they have to publish in a very short time, and obviously this is how people respond. They would respond efficiently by looking for shortcuts, because obviously people don't really care about the institution, don't really care about the process. They really care about the outputs. So basically, it's just the consequences. It's a logical consequences of this enormous pressure. And again, we can see the merits of this explanation as well at the institutional level. So in conclusion, is it bad apples or bad barrels? Probably both. So there's no single sufficient explanation in all of those theories that I told you earlier. However, accumulated evidence says that this unethical behavior should be approached by multiple layers of explanatory levels. It's hard to get a satisfying explanation only from one layer. So we need to take both, not only individual but also institutional level. And this is aligns with evidence that professional stressors plus low probability of getting caught. It's actually giving us the perfect recipe of scientific misconduct. So in Indonesia, again, we heard like so many high-profile cases in the past, but what we haven't heard about these cases is that and how these perpetrators get punished from what they did. So of course, because there's no less conversation about the consequences, then doing scientific misconduct it's a low risk, essentially it's a low risk but offering high returns. So why people bother to maintain or to follow the hard ways? Just do the easy way, and it's a very low risk but offering high returns. And this brings us to the last point. So why transparency here matters? So why transparency can offer something to improve the situation? So oftentimes we associate the demand to the demand to publish in the scientific outlets as something prestigious, right? We highlight the metrics that shows how prestigious the outlets, but it's less about the claims that we made in the paper. So we need to shift the focus from prestige to credibility. So why our research is credible, so people should believe in the claims that I made in the papers. And this can be possible by making all the stages of the scientific process transparent. And what does transparency mean here? So it means that all scientific process should be documented rigorously, and people or the audience can access this information without any barriers. So, and then of course, because of science is built in an infrastructure where people share their materials with one another. They need to know how to interpret these materials and how to reuse these materials. And this is what I meant by transparency. And transparency here makes cheating or unethical behavior easier to detect and can reduce ambiguity. So, because oftentimes people would give an excuse. Oh, I don't know that this is unethical because everybody's doing it. So I don't know that buying papers from paper mills is not allowed, or I don't know whether publishing in these predatory journals are not allowed. It's not a good practice. So transparency, if people are being transparent to each other about their decision in all research stages, it can reduce the ambiguity so people can decide whether this practice is acceptable or not. And in the culture of transparency, scientific misconduct is harder to be justified as everyone does it. So if people nothing to hide, then obviously it means that it gives a signal that they are very confident with their work. They're very confident about their claims. They are ready for public scrutiny. In this case, we hope that transparency is embraced as professional identity. So I'm being transparent of my work. I'm adopting open science practices in my work. So this gives me a signal that I'm being professional as a scientist. In this sense, so people avoid misconduct not only because they are afraid of getting caught by the system. They are not. It doesn't mean that I don't want to engage in unethical behavior because I'm afraid of the punishment. But it's something that is feel incompatible with their professional identity. However, there are many times transparency is not the medicine. It's not the panacea. It's not a solution that works that deals with institutional problems that I presented to you earlier. Because of course, transparency can improve the error detections. It's easier for us to detect scientific misconduct cases, but I think it's impossible to expect that transparency can be an action of deterrence. So I'm still struggling to see open science practices, for example, as an act of prevention that prevent people from doing unethical behavior. Because deterrence here actually requires a strong assumption that people have to believe that they can get caught and receive the consequences. Without this kind of belief that they can actually get caught and get some punishment from their misconduct, it's impossible to see transparency as an act of deterrence. And some people just don't see themselves doing anything wrong. It's a normalcy. In many cases, people would say, well, yeah, okay, I do something wrong, but everybody's doing it. It's not me. I'm not alone in this case. And this is, I think this is it's harder to correct this, because then it means that it goes beyond at the individual level, but that means that there is something wrong with the system. So we need to put a reform in a more like institutional level rather than individual level. And then some people are just more risk averse than other. Some people just, I don't care. I don't care. I'll take the risk. And we can see this is also the case for extreme scientific misconduct. And again, transparency without reforming, it doesn't really fix the perverse incentives problem. And imposing transparency standards can also burden. It could burden the researchers. So it also may increase credibility, but doesn't guarantee quality. And some final remarks that I'd like to reinforce from the three questions that I released earlier. Yes, we do have a crisis of integrity, but the extent is not well known. It's not well understood at the moment, and the crisis is caused both by both bad actors and also the unhealthy research ecosystem. And the third one would be, yes, the transparency can help us to detect errors and fraud more easily, but I'm not sure whether it's sufficient as a deterrent. So thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to have some discussion with all of you.
Thank you, Ibu Rizky. Thank you. I myself note some interesting notes about post-publication review, about the combination of bad apple versus bad barrels. It's also interesting. Let's discuss further later. But for now on, I would like to invite our next speaker. He is Professor Lokman Meho. Is a professor of information science at the American University of Beirut. Correct me if I'm wrong, Professor. And a leading scholar of bibliometric and research evaluation. For today, he will be presenting on the integrity risk profile of Indonesian university. So please, the floor is yours, Professor Lokman Meho.
Thank you very much, Muammar. Rizky, that was a fantastic presentation. I really very much enjoyed it, and I think much of what I will say actually is in support of what you have presented to us. That was really fantastic. Thank you. Muammar, again, one more time, thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you all for attending this presentation. Muammar told me to focus primarily on Indonesia, so this is what I am doing today. I just wanted to re-emphasize what Muammar said before, and Rizky, that Indonesia went through a remarkable research growth over the past decade, to an extent that it increased its output by about over 600% in just 10 years. This actually amounts to the second fastest growing publication system in the world. I forgot country was the number one anyway. And it advanced also from the 48th most published country in the world up to the 19th. And only 10 years ago, there were not a single university in Indonesia that was among the top 1,000 most published universities. Today, there are 10, and I think it will increase in the next couple of years again. And two universities broke into the QS top 250 just recently over the past 2-3 years. And this just show a comparative annual article output based on Scopus, comparing to some other regional countries. And you see the rapid increase in Indonesia, currently publishing over 43,000 articles in 2024. And this without conferences. The next slide is with conferences, and this is very similar to what Rizky just showed us. Indonesia went from about 8,000 to 9,000 papers all the way to more than 65,000. Now, despite all of this, what was the outcome? There is really a huge contrast. When a country improves so much or grows so much in research, you would expect a lot of positive things and great things, unique things, and things that would distinguish the country from others and so on. So unfortunately, the explosive growth in research has not been translated, at least not yet, into proportional global impact or top-tier ranking. For example, and these are only a few indicators, despite the huge growth in research, Indonesia ranks like the fourth lowest in the world in share of articles in Q1 journals. And this is based on journal impact factor, not site score. So only 24% of the country's output is published in Q1 journals. It ranks the second in the world in the share of conference papers. And unfortunately, conference papers are of very low impact. It's actually the ratio between conference papers and journals in Indonesia is 1:5. So for each conference paper, an average of 1 citation, for example, then a journal article by the same country is 5 citations. And 40% is a huge proportion. The world average is actually 14%. Excuse me. And Indonesia also ranks the second in the world in share of articles in journals that do not count at all in the Shanghai ranking. So 45% of the journal articles that Indonesia publishes are not given any kind of credit by the Shanghai ranking, for example. And actually, the 40% conference papers are not given any credit in the QS ranking because they don't use QS ranking. And Indonesia ranks also the 5th in the world in share of articles in delisted journals. Despite publishing over 325,000 articles since 2020, only in the past 5 years or 6, there's not a single university that features in the Shanghai ranking. Only 2 universities are in the QS top 250 and none in the top 250 in Times Higher Education. And there is not a single highly cited researchers based on the Clarivate annual list. And it ranks only 55th in the number of authors that appear in the Stanford list, 207 individuals or authors. And actually these authors, they rank among the top 10 in self-citation rates. So a lot of, or a main reason why some of these authors made it to the Stanford list is because of self-citations. And I'll come back to self-citation very soon. So the result of all of this is really massive investment of resources, time, money, and so on, but with minimal return on global rankings and shaping global discourse at the highest level. These are just like examples of the kind of investment that Indonesia needs to really think about strategically. For example, here this slide shows that Indonesia publishes about 18,000 articles, but how many of them are considered in Shanghai ranking? Less than half of them. Whereas a country like Singapore, almost everything that they publish are indexed in journal or are published in journals that they are counted in the Shanghai ranking. This is another one that shows research, where do Indonesian scholars publish or scientists publish their articles. Again, among the regional countries, it's also has the lowest proportion of articles published in Q1 journal. This one is per site score. It's improving, but still there's a lot of work to be done. This one, this one is from Science Citation Index and Social Science Citation. It shows that Indonesia published about 64,000 articles in the past 10 years. Despite that, there are only 15 authors in the whole country that have published over 100 articles during that period. And again, there are 0 highly cited researchers. If you look at Singapore, it publishes 3 times as many articles as Indonesia, but it has 30 times as many highly published authors as Indonesia, and they have 84 highly cited researchers. It's one of the top countries in terms of the number of highly cited researchers. And highly cited researchers by Clarivate, actually, they do a lot of quality control. They actually, this year alone, they excluded 2,000 authors who were found to be playing the system, gaming the metrics, and so on. So they removed them entirely. If you see, like, for example, the Arab world, only 5-6 years ago, they had about 200 highly cited researchers. Now they have less than 30, because most of them have been excluded from this one. The research impact citation per article, you see also Indonesia, they publish quite a lot, but not as impactful research as the other regional countries. And this is one of the main reasons for this is because much of what Indonesian scholars and scientists are publishing, they are published in low quality journals or journals that later on have been removed or delisted from citation databases, including Scopus and Web of Science. So what's the drive? Who's driving all of this? Like Rizky mentioned, there's a lot of focus on ranking metrics, and these ranking metrics have pushed institutions and researchers toward really maximizing output rather than focusing on quality, impact, research impact, and societal impact, economic impact, and so on. And the country has introduced several policies such as publish or perish rules and accreditation requirements that were tied to volume, and this has amplified the pressure to produce quickly. Unlike most Western countries and many other universities worldwide, actually, it is interesting that in Indonesia, they follow like the system similar to the Gulf region, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, and United Arab Emirates, where they pay to publish. Whereas, for example, at the American University of Beirut, there's nothing like this. All faculty members, they get salaries and are expected to publish so that they get promoted and given tenure. But anyway, these incentives, financial incentives, encourage fast and low quality publishing pathways. And also very weird is the fact that, not very weird, it's actually common among many countries that researchers, they use Scopus to decide whether to publish in a specific journal or conference. So in many cases, as long as a journal or a conference is indexed in Scopus, then that's a quality indicator, and then they go for it. And at the same time, also, some researchers look at whether they are Q1 or Q2, but this is really not very accurate, because actually 40% of the journals that have been delisted by Scopus or Web of Science were actually Q1 and Q2 journals. And so the unintended outcome of all of these policies and pressures from the governments, from the institutions, from the system in general, have really rewarded quantity over quality, and really made the researchers exposed to predatory and high-risk journals, and all of this have elevated institutional integrity risks. So what comes next? I mean, Indonesia has achieved remarkable research growth, but that's not good enough. The next phase should really focus on healthy performance, and the government and the leaders of the university, they really need to offer a clear data-driven way to detect early signs of risky publishing patterns. This is what they really need to focus on to avoid or to do like either damage control or avoid image deterioration and so on. So this is where RI Square provides a nationally relevant solution for Indonesia and many other countries. So what is RI Square? The Research Integrity Risk Index, actually, it was just a coincidence. At my institution, I do most of the bibliometric work. I left the institution from 2021 to 2023. While I was away and did some bibliometric exercise, I realized that some universities that used to publish 10% as much as my institution was publishing, now they outnumber us in the number of articles. So I thought it is a problem within the Scopus database, but after doing some research, I discovered that no, this is actually true. That institution that used to publish only 10% as much as we were publishing were actually now publishing twice as much as AUB, going up from like 300 articles per year all the way to 3,000 articles within just 2 years. That's how much the increase happened over 2 years, and that's led me to do more research on this topic. And as I was doing the research, I came up with this idea, the RI Square. It's really a transparent, data-driven diagnostic tool. The objective is really to provide an early warning system for institutions to be aware of their status in terms of certain indicators and criteria. It's field normalized, so it doesn't compare institutions with strength in medicine to institutions with strength in STEM, but what they are both normalized so that we can put them in a single table. Excuse me. And the data sources are really quite reliable from reputable sources. For example, the retractions come from Retraction Watch database, as well as Medline, Scopus, and Web of Science. And the other data all from Scopus and Web of Science. And RI Square classifies institutions into 5 different risk tiers, going from low risk all the way to red flag. What RI Square is not, it is not really it's not a ranking system. It doesn't rank institutions. It just classifies them into different tiers, risk tiers. It's not a punishment tool. It's not an evaluation of individual researchers. It does not criticize institutions or countries, and it doesn't assume intent or misconduct. It just provides data to institutions to tell them, look, this is where you stand on these 3 indicators or together. The RI Square is based on 3 components. It's based on 3 components. I'm working on a 4th component, and I'm also working on adding more valuable data that would support these, these three components. The three components include the delisted rate, journal rate. This is measured the proportion of an institution's article published in delisted journals. Why it should matter to universities in Indonesia? It's a strong indicator of engaging with predatory or low quality publications or journals. It's a waste of research money, research fund, whether it's article processing charges or the incentive that you pay for publishing in these articles. So we are talking about tens of millions of dollars and in some cases even more annually. And after all, they do not count in rankings. So why you are publishing in journals that will not bring you any dividends at all? Actually, it's quite the opposite given what RI Square is doing. And what does it single? It single lack of proper research training, because in many cases, your faculty members actually don't know the consequences of publishing in these journals, or they don't realize the weaknesses of using Scopus as a selection tool, and so on and on. And the pressure to publish at any cost. The retraction rate, I think we are very familiar with this. It's the proportion of an institution's published articles that have been formally retracted due to integrity concerns. And the retraction rate in RI Square actually excludes many of the retractions that are not the mistake of the authors. In many cases, the retractions are done not because the authors have done something wrong. These are excluded, and I use actually a very, it's based on the methodology used here is largely based on the methodology devised by the founder of the Stanford list, Professor Ioannidis at Princeton, not Princeton, what university is this? Anyway, it's in California. Why it matters? Retraction are the most public and damaging form of research failure. A high retraction rate poses severe reputation risk to the institution. It's a clear indicator of serious integrity issues at institutions, especially if it is a high rate. And then the self-citation rate. The self-citation rate is the proportion of an institution's total citation that come from citing its own researchers or its own publications. Self-citation is not really a bad practice. It's actually encouraged, especially for research that builds on prior research. But excessive, when it becomes excessive, then it's a problem. And it indicates participation in citation cartel, closed networks, and it can artificially inflate impact metrics. And actually, ranking agencies like Clarivate, annual highly cited researchers, they now actually, I mentioned it before, that they remove authors with excessive self-citation or even reciprocal citations. I mentioned earlier that RI Square classifies institutions into 5 risk tiers, from low risk all the way to the red flag. Red flag means a critical risk, and there is an immediate need for serious intervention or urgent intervention and audit. This is really very serious integrity concern. What does red flag mean? It means an institution that really is not doing well at all in almost all 3, in 2 or more of IR Square components. We will see an example very shortly. And all the way to the low risks. The low risks really these are like, you can say these are the model institutions. These are the kind of institution one should really benchmark with, and so on. Normal variation are very good. They are maintaining excellent performance that aligns with global norms. And the watch list, it's between, anyway, this is very clear. This is like a map of the average RI Square of the institutions included in the 2025 edition. You will see that most of the research integrity issues, or it is primarily an issue in the global south. And unfortunately, Indonesia, Malaysia, India, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, all of these are suffering from research integrity issues. Actually, 15 of Indonesia's 20 most published institutions are classified in the red flag or high risk tiers. This is how Indonesia compares to the regional universities, regional countries. You see, in Singapore, there's not a single institution with even a normal variation, let alone the other tiers. All four of their institutions are have very low risk, are classified as low risk, whereas Indonesia is very similar to Malaysia. They have several institutions with high risk and red flag universities. This is just to show you a comparison for comparison between retraction rate and articles in delisted journals. And if you look at both maps, you will see that Indonesia has a darker red in the delisted journals and lighter red in the retraction rate. This just gives an idea that in Indonesian case, it is actually the article in delisted journal that is making many of its institutions get classified as high risk or red flag. And there is a lot of work to be done in the delisted journals rather than retractions, although both should be the focus of any country and institution. This table shows you the tier distribution in Indonesia. It includes all 20 most published universities in 2023-2024. I highlighted in green, you see, just to show you that the issue for these institutions where I highlight their data in green, it means like in this case here, the issue is the publishing in delisted journals. In this case, for example, only these institutions are suffering primarily from retractions, but the rest are doing really quite well in terms of retractions. It's always better to see a zero everywhere, not everywhere here, zero on the retraction, and also near zero in the delisted journals. And not all of them are suffering from self-citations. So this is the nice thing about the RI square, is that it doesn't only provide a cumulative or an average RI square score, but it also shows institutions where is the specific problem in that institution. Is it the D rate, R rate, or self-citation? In some cases, like the first few institutions, the issue or the challenges in all three components. And in other cases, there's only one issue. For example, these three universities, the issue is only delisted journals, for example, or these four. So this is the nice thing about the RI square. Okay. So what are the key takeaways and call to action for university leaders? I think in Indonesia's case, issues are not as challenging as in some other countries. The issues are really manageable. It could be managed through new policies, improved policies, and of course practice as well. Policies are not enough if they are not implemented strictly, because as we have seen in the previous slide, much of the issues or most of the issues are related to delisted journals. So you could easily develop a policy where you say, for example, something that would really avoid having faculty members invest their time, money, and resources on publishing in really low quality journals. And one more thing also, very soon for each institution, I will be adding to the retraction to the RI square database. And for each of the 2,000 institutions, I will add the count of first author, last author, and correspond.
Friendly, easygoing, banyak kan?
Okay, first author, how many, for example, State University of Padang, how many of their authors are engaged in publishing in delisted journals? How many are engaged in retractions? And who has more than the higher than the median self-citation rate? University leaders should use IR square as an internal diagnostic early warning system, really not a public shame list. I don't think any university should really, it's up to them, really, but that's not my real intention, is to have people use it as a shaming list. The nice thing about RI square, it shifts the focus from performance maximization, like publication count and citation counts and highly cited research and whatnot, into integrity governance. How good are we and how good we do our research. And also it tries to indirectly making institutions focus on societal impact, economic impact, and so on. The also nice thing about RI square, I'm extremely with the fact that what Risky mentioned, that RI square is about risks but not the severity. It doesn't tell us much about the severity, but given that it's a public database, I feel it will make many institutions think twice before continuing with what they are currently doing, publishing in delisted journals and engaged in paper mills, excessive self-citation, and so on. Because now with this database being in public and highly publicized throughout the world and international media and so on, I think they will think twice. I think it will help a little bit in improving things, and that will be good enough for me and for many others, I think. And what else? For policymakers, the integrity crisis is structural, not anecdotal. So this really provides evidence that there is an integrity problem at many institutions and in many countries worldwide. And policymakers should really link incentives to funding. They should link incentives and funding to integrity metrics, not just publication volume. And what else? Promote a culture of values over speed. I think that's it. Thank you very much. I have 2 more slides, but this is I left it for sharing the file with you later for anyone who would like to have a copy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Lokman. I think by
Sure.
now the picture is more complete. Not only that you put some map in which you put Indonesia within world view, like this is very interesting because there's some colors, red, orange, and so on and so forth. But because you provide also statistic, people say numbers don't lie. But of course, yeah, of course,
Absolutely.
sure. There's probably a bit criticism about your methodology, and that is why we invite Dr. Zulkarnain Hamson. To spec, is a senior academic from Universitas Indonesia Timur, and his writing examine some methodological and contextual assumption behind the RI square metric. So I think without further ado, I will give the floor to Dr. Zulkarnain Hamson, please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Dear Professor Lokman Meho, Dr. Muhammad Zain Gaddafi for inviting me. And Dr. Rizky Amelia Zain, thank you for taking the time to meet with you all in this forum. Saudara-saudara yang hadir dalam link Zoom ini, izinkan saya menyampaikan beberapa catatan saya dalam bahasa Indonesia, dan saya minta bantuan kepada Dr. Muhammad Zain Kadafi untuk menyampaikan kepada Prof. Meho.
I'll do my best, insyaAllah.
Baik. Ada pertanyaan yang ingin salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ya Rabbi salli alaihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik alaihi. Yang saya hormati Prof. Meho, saya akan bertanya berkaitan dengan bagaimana telah etika expose nama institusi yang memberi label negatif. Pertama adalah klasifikasi tentang risiko. Apa definisi operasional untuk setiap kategori yang Anda gunakan? Anomali, risiko ekstrim, risiko tinggi, risiko sedang, dan risiko rendah. Termasuk ambang numerik, bobot variabel dan algoritma atau aturan keputusan yang menerapkan. Ada protokol yang mestinya dilampirkan, karena ini berkaitan dengan pencatutan, penyebutan nama institusi. Saya sangat menghargai apa yang Prof. Meho barusan sampaikan, demikian juga pemaparan ekosistem dunia ilmiah kita di Indonesia oleh Dr. Rizky. Tetapi saya tetap harus meminta, Prof. Meho tadi sudah menjelaskan bahwa ini bukanlah sebuah metode yang bisa dipakai untuk mengukur, tetapi ada penyebutan nama institusi. Dan itu membutuhkan pertanggungjawaban secara etik, karena itu publikasi dan itu publikasi internasional.
Perlu saya translate sekarang, Pak? Mungkin biar nggak terlalu banyak.
Saya selesaikan aja sedikit ini.
Oke,
setelah itu mohon dibantu. Begitu. Untuk izin persetujuan institusional, apakah Prof. Meho melakukan institutional permission ke semua institusi yang Anda publikasi? Ada banyak kampus di Indonesia yang Anda sebutkan. Ya, sekalipun itu, saya harus mengatakan bahwa ada standar etik yang juga mungkin itu diatur oleh ARWU, juga misalnya oleh Koper. Pedoman standar inilah yang menurut saya perlu Profesor Meho jelaskan kepada kami di Indonesia. Apakah ada standar etik yang berjalan ketika institusi-institusi itu dipublikasikan? Ada kepentingan apa dengan penyebutan itu? Kalau hanya sekedar untuk mengetahui bahwa mereka mempublikasi artikel yang bereputasi dan tidak bereputasi. Kemudian siapa pendana penelitian ini? Siapakah yang melakukan pendanaan penelitian Prof. Meho? Itu juga perlu kita tahu, karena itu adalah standar etik yang saya kira bukan internasional. Itu berlaku di seluruh dunia, bukan hanya katakanlah di Indonesia. Seperti kami kepada para mahasiswa harus memberi penekanan agar mereka mematuhi etika dalam penelitian. Saya kira itu beberapa hal yang menurut saya Prof. Meho penting untuk beri klarifikasi kepada kami. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
So it's very brave, sharp, and precise, Professor Lokman Meho. I think the question was mainly addressed to you, Professor Lokman Meho. So if you can answer by now. So after Professor Lokman Meho answer, I will give the floor to all the audience. Please just raise your hand and ask your question. So for Professor Lokman Meho, Dr. Zulkarnain Hamson is questioning about some ethical matters related to your publication. So for instance, by exposing some names of universities, according to Dr. Zulkarnain Hamson, it did affect to their university. You know, their reputation is being asked. Their probably students are not trusting again the university. So what can you say about it, about the ethical and the implication of that publication? Also, Professor Zulkarnain Hamson is questioning about whether it is need to have an institutional permission to publish such kind of publication, like you mentioning name, you mentioning universities, and do you ever think about the consequences of your publication? And the third question raised by Dr. Zulkarnain Hamson is about, I'm not sure how to say it. It's about the funding, the funding between your research. Is it merely academic academic what effort or academic activity, or it's probably funded by someone who wants to know more about the current situation of the world and so on and so forth. So I will give the floor for Ibu Rahayu, but after Professor Lokman Meho answer this very question. Please.
Yes. First, let me emphasize again that the intention of the RI square index is not to really damage the reputation of any institution or individual. The intention of RI square is actually to show where does each institution stand in comparison to others. And I want to emphasize another thing is the fact that this is public information, what I'm publishing. It's actually based on scholarship and not proprietary. Well, it's based on proprietary data, but because it's processed data and anyone can really visit Scopus and generate the data that I produced. The only difference is that I made it public at a much larger scale, but the intention again is not really to damage the reputation of any institution. And another thing I would like to emphasize is that actually Indonesia is one of the how should I say it, one of the best countries in the world in its reception of the RI square. Actually, the positive feedback that I received from Indonesia outperformed all other countries in the world. They all primarily were very, very thankful for doing this exercise or producing this index. They all said it will help enormously in their future work and doing damage control, let's say, but putting things on the right track. In fact, I feel like actually I'm doing a huge favor to UNHAS and to all other institutions by telling them, look, your resources are not spent in the right place. Perhaps you need to rethink where you are investing, how you are investing, and also it will give them the opportunity to investigate, for example. Is this, who's damaging our reputation? Is it like a single person, a small group of people, unintentionally? So RI Square, in a way, it's providing them with information that they could use to really see where is the problem and how can we fix it so that the problem doesn't become bigger and bigger. It's actually, in my opinion, for many universities worldwide, I think I wish such, and I think Risky implied this. I wish such a tool was in place actually several years ago, especially when Risky mentioned around the 2010, 11, and 12, the policies were introduced in Indonesia, and that's where we started to see an incredible growth in research output. If such a tool was there in place at the time, for example, things might have been differently. Instead of like publishing some 70,000 articles or papers today, maybe we would have published 40,000, but with much more impact than the 70,000. And my sincere apologies if this is probably also unintentional consequences of RI square. Yes.
Yeah, I think Dr. Hamson will understand that, Professor Lokman. Bapak Hamson, perlu kami terjemahkan atau quite clear by now? Atau pengen merespon lagi? Oh, cukup ya?
Ya, ya,
Okay, sure. So because the data is already public and Professor Lokman Meho has said very clearly that there is no such bad intention for that. It's purely academic, and we truly appreciate that effort as well. So I will give the floor for Ibu Rahayu Rizky from Triple IU, please. You may address the
Okay,
question to either speaker. Okay.
okay. Pak Muhammad, can you hear my voice clearly?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have to apologize because I cannot open the camera because I have like some technical issues. And I have a questions to Bu Rizky Amelia. Okay, Bu Rizky, I'm very interesting when you said that, especially when when your question is about, do we actually have the research integrity? And also when you are mentioning about, do we need to change the system, or is it the problem of us, like the individual, or the entire systems? And also, I love when you said that the bad apples theory, when unethical individuals behave unethically because they have like flow moral characters and then everyone is follow them. And then it is also a good comparison. Is it bad apples or is it bad barrels? You said that it's a boat, right? And then it's also multiple layer problems. And my question to you is, do you think which layers of the research systems, is it individual, is it institutional, or maybe national, which contribute most for the the integrity challenges? And if the research integrity failure arise across multiple layers, what kind of like specific reform should be prioritized to strengthen the system as a whole? Because you said mentioning about the system as a whole, and then what can we do about it, right? So that is my question to Bu Rizky Amalia. Thank you, Pak Muhammad.
Okay, Ibu Rahayu, we note everything. I think Bu Rizky can go for the answers.
For sure. Thank you so much, Burahayu. Such a thought-provoking questions, I'd say. I would say it's a very complicated question to address. And this is something that we as a community, as an international community even, this is something that we haven't figured it out yet. There have been many initiatives to reform research assessment, for example. So now at the global level, we have COARA coalitions to reform research assessments. And this is also a problem in many countries, not only in Indonesia, even though we knew from Professor Meho presentations here that the problem seems to be exacerbated. It's really prevalent in the global south, but this is not uniquely prevalent in the global south. We also have problems about research integrity here in Germany. Yes, it's a very important questions to consider from which level we should intervene. So when we want to design some kind of intervention, so where should we start? I would say that the discourse from the past decades, when people starting to talk about open science as a response to the fact that, okay, so in the literature we see a lot of claims being made, but when someone else tried to reproduce the effect or the results of this claim, they couldn't find the same thing. So this makes us kind of like doubtful whether all the claims made in the literature actually reflect the reality. So people now trying to impose some kind of standard to the researchers that they have to follow certain kinds of procedure to make all of their research stages openly available so that people can easily verify their claims. I think it's a good initiative starting from the individual level, but I don't think that it actually answers the problem with the system, because obviously if unethical behavior gets rewarded all the time, it's very hard for us as an individual to stay true to our principles, because obviously it doesn't lead us to anywhere, but only our pride or just staying true to our moral principles. So we definitely cannot rely individuals to change their practices, but at the systemic level, the policymakers need to really think about how to assess research, I think most importantly, how to allocate resources. Because in Indonesia, for example, many universities, the ministry, for example, they decide how much the budget will go to certain universities based on their performance, right? And this performance actually, they use this kind of metrics, so the volume of publications, for example, the citation numbers, but they use all of these metrics to decide to decide to assess the performance of the institution. So I think this needs to be changed. So this is why us as an individuals, of course, we need to change our practices, but we cannot. This is not a sustainable practices. This is not a sustainable change. So the system needs to change as well. So that the system would reward us as an individual that from our practices. So this is, I think, it has to be done in parallel. So us as an individual, we change our practices. We make sure that our claims are credible, but also at the systemic level, the ministry has to change that, because obviously this explosion of growth, this misconduct cases actually engineered as as unintentional or unintended consequences from their policy, and this needs to be aware. People need to be aware that this is also the problems. So I hope that I answer the questions. Yeah.
Can I have like one more question, Bu Rizky?
For sure.
So does it mean that the integrity can be improved through the individual training alone, or you think that we need to, like deeper institutional and also policy level changes to be implemented in our system? What do you think about it, Bu?
I truly believe that it has some value. So giving trainings to researchers just to make sure that they understand what is good practices, what is acceptable practices. Of course, it's valuable. However, I don't think that this would be like
Easy to
the only
implement.
exactly. It's not easy to implement. It doesn't erase the problems, but we need to put a reform to the systems, and this actually signals which behaviors can actually reward it. And this, I think, it's very important as well. So before I think before we move on to another questions, I would like to give a brief comment to what we talked about earlier about R square, if that's okay.
Yeah, go.
Right.
Mm.
All right. So I think Professor Meho, that was marvelous. I think I think what you have done with your work with R square is very, very important. I think it's very valuable information. And what I think is very important, but what I find it very fascinating is that the level of criticism in your work, I think it's super healthy. I think this is something that we really like to see in academic conversation, academic discourse. But I wonder why we don't see the same level of criticism to university rankings, which actually it is something that is created by commercial enterprises. And even the questions about the conflict of interest here, I think it has to be directed to them, because they also offer some kind of consultation to university to improve their rankings. So I think for me, I think it's puzzling how these commercial enterprises, they produce rankings, but they also offer some consultation to university to improve their rankings. So here we can see like a really clear conflict of interest, and people don't really seem to criticize this. So I think we really need to see the same level of criticism to this university or global university rankings at the same level as the criticism that I think it's perfectly, of course, this is something that is healthy. This is normal in academic conversation. So let's hope that we find the same level of criticism they directed to not only to R square, but also in these commercial enterprises.
Sure. I think Professor Lokman, you gotta answer Rizky's question.
Well, I'm not sure it was a question, but I totally agree with Rizky.
Okay.
Actually, my entire article is against ranking. RI square actually was developed in response to ranking systems and the harm they are doing to all institutions worldwide, because after all, ranking agencies are, like Rizky mentioned, are commercial enterprises. Their main interest is to make money rather than really improve things in terms of academics, research integrity, research. They care less about how should I say it, who ranks what, as long as they are generating profit. And Rizky mentioned something extremely important. How come they are the money makers and the consultants, and are they really advising the institution that they are paying, that pay them money? Are they advising them and on what, things like that. But the article that I published about the RI square actually details the problem with ranking systems and how they incentivize institutions to focus on metrics that don't really matter to the country and so on, and divert attention to numbers rather than impact and value. So yes, I cannot agree more with Risky, and although I didn't mention much about rankings in my presentation, I did include some, but not as much as but the article is entirely about RI square against ranking systems. And actually, because of my study, or as a result of my study, my institution, we just recently withdrew from Times Higher Education. And I think you all heard about the Sorbonne University also withdrew from Times Higher Education, primarily because of integrity issues, their methodologies, their lack of transparency, which Risky emphasized, and so on and on. I think many other important universities actually they withdrew from Times Higher Education recently. I think University of Utrecht and some other as well. Muammar, just 2 months ago, I think Times Higher Education, they wrote an article about RI Square defending their methodology.
Oh yeah.
Yes, defending their methodology. I mean, Phil Beatty actually wrote the article in response to RI Square, but of course it was all lip services, and they will not change their methodology if it will affect their income.
Okay.
Yes,
I
definitely.
think we would like to meticulously read your article, Professor Lokman, as well as the response from DHA. It's very interesting as well.
Sure.
Probably you can share me afterward, and I can share to the
Sure.
audience.
The accepted manuscript, actually, the QR code is on the PowerPoint file that I will share with you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, the audience, Khalid, you still have any question to the speakers? Okay, so again, this is the pre-event of our upcoming Al-Jami'ah Forum in December, Professor Lokman. If you manage to come to Indonesia, please visit us. We would like to see you in person, inshallah.
Inshallah. Indonesia is a country that my wife and I will definitely visit in the future.
Okay. Welcome anytime to Yogyakarta.
Sure.
Also, we would like
Thank you
to
very much.
thank Professor Lokman Meho, Ibu Rizky Amelia Zain. Of course, after this session, I believe that many of us would like to in touch with each of you. So, if you mind, I would like I like to ask your permission to to share your presentation toward them, because some persons are already asking your presentation. Of course, this is very fruitful session, inshallah. We learn a lot of things from each of you, from Professor Lukman Meho about the ecosystem of Indonesia and worldwide, from Ibu Rizky Amalia Zain. Good luck for your thesis. Just heard that you just proposed your PhD thesis. Okay, so good luck for that, inshallah. Again, Bapak Zulkarnain Hamson also, thank you for your insight. And the audience, I would like to wrap up this meeting by thanking everyone who has been joining us from the very beginning, like 2 hours ago. And we are still like 43 in the Zoom, which is very good. On behalf of Al-Jami'ah, I would like to apologize for any inconvenience during the session. Again, thank you so much, and see you in our next session, inshallah. See you, everyone. Thank you, Ibu Rahayu.
Thank you, Bu Rizky.
Thank you, Professor Lokman, Ibu Rizky.
Thank you, Rizky. It was a pleasure. I will be in touch with you.
Have a good day, everyone.
Yes.
Ya. Makasih Mas Muammar ya.
Terima kasih Pak Wildan, Pak Sabtoni,
Thank you.
Mbak Eti, Bu Nihe, Mbak Masyita.
Thank you
Eh,
Pak Muhammad. Izin live dulu Pak.
siap,
Izin live, Pak. Thank
siap,
you.
siap. Makasih semua. Sampai ketemu di bulan
Thank you.
depan di Al-Jami'ah
Terima
Forum.
kasih Pak Muammar dan semuanya.
Iya.